This one is Paint in a Three-Way. I actually, when I did it, it was purely experimental. There's really, I feel almost kind of torn hanging it, but I think that it shows my development as an artist, because I was not only working in terms of trying to come up with an image or a political social dialogue, but it was really like an experiment of how I can express that. And so this was a work where I used several different mediums, and it was to kind of discover their weaknesses and strengths, how I could incorporate them, because this is a tempera, acrylic, and oil, and as most painters know, that with the weight of paint, if you have like a heavy, you can't put tempera on top of oil, because then the oil will dry inappropriate. It won't actually dry to the canvas. It will just peel off, and then also you can't do oil onto tempera, because the oil will never allow the tempera to dry, or it will, the tempera won't actually dry. It will just mix in with the oil and give it like a strange hue or pigment. So I worked a lot with combining and doing tempera, and then doing the acrylic, and then doing the oil, and then I experimented in doing I experiment in several different ways, and it kind of adversely affects this in a lot of ways. If you look at it, you can see some damage due to like humidity and things like that, just because of the nature of using materials like tempera and acrylic and oil all together, because they all can be affected by humidity and temperature adversely. But the imagery is purely just, I tried to make a fresco finish onto a canvas. I made the fresco finish, and then I was like, well, what goes on a fresco? And then I was like, women go on a fresco. And then, well, what do the women do? And so maybe subconsciously there might be some kind of message that I was trying to relay, but it was really just an experiment on mediums and materials in the painting realm, because I didn't feel like I was stretching myself enough. I felt like I was sticking to acrylic, and I had to branch out. So this was the actual result of that. As you guys may have guessed, if you've seen the title, this is a painting of my wife, and it's very basic painting. It was actually done fairly early, done in 2009. I guess not that early, but beginning of 2009. I actually did it on my wife because she asked me to do one of her, and so I did it. And largely the title, I think, to us and to me is most important, because no matter what, after publishing the work as my wife, there really is nothing I can do to change that. I mean, you can get divorces, and you can do all those things. You can get separated, but ultimately she will always be my wife, because you can't change the name of a painting. It's impossible. There's no legal system that you can go through. There's no ceremony you can do. She will always be my wife. And so that was the important part of this painting. Now we're at the last piece, and this is the piece that's probably the most, I guess, surrendering. Like I really am surrendering a lot when I expose myself. It's really an exposure of myself, because in my life I have tried to quantify my life with my mortality, and I've thought about suicide. And I actually, when I was younger, I had a friend, and she told me that she had wanted to commit suicide, and I think she had possibly attempted as well. And I realized that like how normal it was to try to quantify my mortality with my death, like quantify my life with what would happen if I were dead, and also the worth of my own life, and then those feelings spiral into individualism, in a sense where I feel like I'm the only person who feels that way. But my friend, she saved me, and so this work is called Confessions. Well, actually, this work is based on the painting Confession Saves Lives, and it can be interpreted several ways. There's one actual way to interpret the message, and the actual interpretation is, I've written a to-do list. Dying would make me love myself, but with my friend's confession, I've learned to love myself without dying. I think people can identify, I think people who have not yet made that confession can identify with the message. They can see the message, and they can either identify with the fact that loving themselves is no longer important. They can identify with the order that dying is the only way that they can love themselves, or they can identify with the intended way, where it is that I love myself now, and only thing left is to die, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen tomorrow, but I don't need that in order to love myself, and it doesn't have to go in that specific order. So this is the surrendering piece of the whole thing, probably the most emotionally, I guess, trying part of the whole show, and it's strange just because it's the smallest piece, and I think that that was a really good intention, because it was a very important part of my life, but it seems so small now, and because it was so long ago, and I realized how, not necessarily strange, because it's not a strange thing to think about, but how strange it is for myself to now see where I am now and think about that's how I used to think. So having the Post-it note, I have the painting also in the show, but I felt that the Post-it note it had to be a reality, because it is a reality, and I think that people really need to confess, and so confession saves lives.